I am like a bad penny. Is there going to be somebody operating? Probably. No, I'm going to jump on the other side of this camera. So as soon as an operator. A lot of work in there. Probably Zobel. Rich played softball for 30 seconds. He played for David Wright's softball team. And Rich played pretty mean. Not surprising. You know, I mean, one of the things I've said to Jay probably since I started is that there's going to come a point in time where it's never worked anywhere else. I mean, as a real matter. I mean, once you finish business school.
Right.
So, you know, it might have been a couple of years past in some respect. He's such a loyal guy, though.
Yeah.
You know, like that, they felt such a tie to the team that he built.
Yeah.
So I think he's moved to what could be a really interesting opportunity. I don't know much about VF or Smart Ball, but it's certainly bigger. And
Yeah.
there was a point in time where he was going to have to do something. Yeah. So the challenge for us is sort of what do we do?
Right.
Do we hire somebody outside? Do we promote somebody? So that's been sort of the question we're examining for ourselves at this point.
Well, it hasn't been the question for quite a while too. Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And that's it.
We haven't answered it yet. Do you have any answers?
Well, I kind of figured it's. Hey, John. I kind of figured, at some point he'd sell.
Yeah.
Either you build a little empire, or
Yeah.
you'd sell.
There's a lot of impetus for that, but that'd be really hard on Jay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's always been his baby.
yeah, my point of view is why take it? We've changed so many things. That's sort of the one vestige that remains, and I feel like that's a pretty big deal it's a nice little company. It works. It's got a great position. There's some, but it's a great little company.
Yes. Yeah, and I remember you looking at the amount of cash it was spinning off, or even could spin off, and
Yeah.
it's just it's never really going to.
If we were limited in doing other things because of that capital tied up, that'd be a bigger impetus, right? But I mean, we haven't hit that constraint yet. So it's easy to keep it for now. Get back to me in a month, though.
afternoon. My name is Bob Blackstone. I currently serve as the partner in charge of the Seattle office of Davis Wright Tremaine. And on behalf of all the lawyers and staff of the firm, I want to welcome you all to this memorial service to celebrate the life of our former partner and an extraordinary man, John Zobel. I want to particularly welcome John's family, members who were able to join us today, including, of course, his wife and our partner, Laverne, and his son, Eric. John practiced law at Davis Wright for 20 years before becoming a full-time writer and parent in 2007. And during that time, he quickly established a reputation as both a terrific lawyer and someone who truly was a Renaissance man. John was someone who cared deeply about his colleagues and particularly about the development of newer lawyers in our firm. Even though it's only been 10 years since John left, or has been 10 years since he left, I think the attendance at today's service is compelling testimony to the impact that John had on the lawyers and staff at Davis Wright Tremaine. You will soon be hearing from others about their memories of John, but what sticks out for me is just his extraordinary mind and his incredibly quick and wry wit. Although he often was in fact the smartest guy in the room, you would never hear him say that. After the service this afternoon, I hope all of you will join us for a reception in the lobby lounge, which is at the other end of the lobby, just past the main elevators. The names and affiliations of each of our speakers is listed on your program. I will not introduce them individually. We'll start with my law partner, Marco Desai Silva. Marco?
I met John 29 years ago when he was a second-year associate in the litigation department at Davis Wright, and I was a summer associate. My initial impressions of John were that he was a proud graduate of Harvard College. He was a rising star in the firm. He had a perfect memory. He valued precision in language, and he was direct, impatient, unsentimental, very funny, and defiantly, unapologetically left-handed. I tried many times to get him to apologize for that, and he never would. Because John and I both loved humor and making people laugh, we began putting on skits together at firm retreats, usually with Steve Rummage, where we made jokes about people in positions of authority and sang silly songs together. In those days, we usually wrote the skits in a hotel room on the day of the retreat. And John had such a quick mind, it was easy for him to write jokes and remember lines under pressure. And if there wasn't enough time to write funny lines, he would just improvise jokes like a professional comic. There was one retreat where he just grabbed a microphone and went out among the tables and engaged in impromptu conversation with the people there, and we all laughed. He was brilliant at that kind of thing. Although John was accomplished and a rising star at the firm, I was surprised to learn that, as I got to know him better, that he was not impressed by his own accomplishments and did not seem to value people with accomplishment or reputation or power any more than he valued people who didn't have any of those things. He did not seem to be concerned with status. That was just one of his many admirable qualities. On my first visit to John's house, I noticed that the roof of his car was partly collapsed, as though someone had gotten up and stomped on it. I thought it was cool that he drove around in a beat-up old car, but I remember thinking maybe he needs to be a little bit more status conscious than this. But I asked him what happened to the roof, and he explained that he was giving a friend a ride home, and his friend had a bicycle, and he had a roof rack, a bike rack on top of the car, so he put the bike up on top of the car and drove the friend home. And when he got to his friend's apartment building, John forgot that there was a bike up there, and he tried to drive into the parking garage, and he just demolished everything. So I realized then that John didn't have a perfect memory. It was an excellent memory, better than most of us. But you couldn't look at that car and say he had a perfect memory. John told me once that he did not enjoy his time at Harvard and that he would never give a dime to that school. His college diploma, which would have meant so much to so many people, seemed to mean almost nothing to him. So it was especially painful for him whenever he would make a tiny mistake, like trying to drive a car with a bike on top into a parking garage. Somebody would say to him, "And you went to Harvard." John could have had a long and brilliant career as a lawyer, but he wanted a different path, and Laverne helped him find it. With Laverne's help, John was able to leave the practice of law and to devote his life to two things that mattered a lot to him: spending time with Eric and writing. It was in this period of John's life that I really got to spend a lot of time with him and got to know him better. Around the time John stopped working as a lawyer, I told him that I'd written an outline for a screenplay and asked him to read it and give me his comments. And he did, and soon after that, we agreed to work on it together as co-writers, and that began one of the most enjoyable and satisfying experiences of my life. John and I began meeting, sometimes once a week, sometimes once a month, sometimes in a coffee shop or at his house, or usually in a conference room at Davis Wright, to work on our screenplay together. And sometimes you read about people in Hollywood writing a screenplay in a month or two. John and I worked on this screenplay for 16 or 17 years. As long as it takes a cicada to ensure on the ground, and it's still not finished. When we worked together, a lot of our time was spent brainstorming ideas to solve story problems. So we would sit across a table from each other and take turns offering ideas to each other. You know, what if this happened next? Or what if this character says that? And sometimes the room would be silent for a while as John and I just sat there thinking, trying to come up with a solution to a problem in the story, like what does Margaret do when she realizes David has dropped out of school because of her? Or when David finishes playing the piano, can Margaret see that his hands are shaking? John taught me to care about details like that. In the time we worked on our screenplay together, John was never impatient with me, not once. He never once said that it was taking too long or that we should quit, and he never expressed irritation at me for slowing us down, even when he could have. And I really came to value that. John had the patience of Job. I think it's possible that each of us believed privately, after a few years working together, that there was no chance that what we were doing was ever going to matter to anybody except us. But we enjoyed so much our time together, working on this story together, and building these characters together, that there was just no way we were ever going to quit. Sometimes one of us would have an idea, and the other one would say, "That just gave me the chills, write it down." And that happened many times. We both got the chills at the same time, and that was really just the best feeling in the world. Usually when John wanted to propose an idea, he would begin by saying, "I'm just talking out loud," instead of "I'm just thinking out loud," because we knew somebody at the firm who always got it wrong like that. And so John did it to be funny. He was imprecise with language when it would get a laugh. I learned while working with John that he was not as unsentimental as I thought when I first met him. There's a part in our screenplay where the main character, whose name is David, is talking on his cell phone while he's standing on a street in New York. And he's just met a young woman named Margaret who he likes, and someone mentions her on the phone call in passing, and suddenly David is totally distracted thinking about this woman, Margaret, and wondering if she's done something to help him without telling him about it. And John and I were struggling with how to show what David is thinking about Margaret without using any words, without any dialogue at all. So after we thought about it for a while, John said, "I'm just talking out loud." But what if David, while he's standing there on the sidewalk on the phone, listening to this guy on the phone, he sees a figurine of an angel in a store window. And he just looks at it and he walks over to it and he puts up his hand on the glass like he's trying to reach out and touch that angel. and just rests his hand on the glass, and after a few seconds he takes his hand off and the vapor trail is there, and he just watches that disappear. And that's how we show what he's thinking about Margaret. And I don't remember every detail of that conversation, of course, but I probably said that gave me the chills, and I wrote it down because it's in our screenplay today. Many of my first impressions of John were wrong, except that he was very funny, and he was definitely left-handed. He was patient, he was sentimental, he was subtle, he played with words for fun, he was not prideful, and he didn't care about social status. He was committed to everything he put his hands on, his family, his friends, his work. He was there for the long haul. He was an angel of a man, and he was a long-distance runner, and what an elegant run he had.
So, speaking of getting chills, I might cry when I read this, but just seeing all of you here is giving me chills. And thank you all so much for coming and honoring my brother and my family. I'm very grateful. So one of our prized family possessions is a tape recording that my brother Dave made without our knowledge in 1974. It was his 12th birthday, and John was a few months shy of 14. It's a hilarious and somewhat cringe-inducing tape, not so much for what we are saying, but for the way it captures all of our personalities so perfectly. Dave, the birthday boy, ever gracious and charming, says, "Gee, neat, thanks," for each present he opens. Sarah, the youngest at that point, at 7, brash and unafraid, says, "Give it, give it," as one of those presents is being passed around. When prompted by an adult to say please, she snaps, "Please give it." I, as a middle child, try not to make waves, and when the cake is cut, say, "I'll just have the tiniest slice." I still try not to make waves, but I like big slices of cake. And through it all, like his own Greek chorus, reliable as the tides, is John. He's telling a story in excruciating detail of a school baseball game he had played earlier that day. Patiently he waits while we younger ones swirl about him, planets to his sun. He knows it will eventually come back to him, and it always does, and he has no shortage of details to relay. Play by play, inning by inning. "So anyway, Mom," he says repeatedly, every time he thinks he's waited long enough. This has now become a common family quip, when we want to say, "Enough, back to me." "So anyway, Mom." And for me, it represents so many things about growing up with John. He was always there with a story, whether you thought you wanted to hear it or not. He could take the smallest incident and turn it into a 30-minute monologue. But he could also convey sheer volumes in a single word. As a lawyer and a writer, words were his professional tools. As a big brother, and later as a husband and a father, they were the glue he used to connect us, to keep us together, and to show us, even at his bossiest, how much he cared. My brother John loved to tell stories. Everyone who knew him knew this about him. He would come home from seeing a movie and tell you point by point, scene by scene, everything that happened. His mind, so brilliant and quick, could memorize lines of movies. In fact, entire movies after only one viewing, and he did not believe in spoiler alerts. And God help you if you were the first person or even the 5th person he saw the morning after he had a particularly interesting dream. Fleshed out every detail, every color, every movement. And he wasn't interested in your interpretation. He was so caught up in his own fascination, he just assumed you would be too. And you were, partly because he was your big brother and you did what he wanted, and partly because he knew how to share the kind of details that would capture and hold anyone's attention. To say he was good with details is an understatement. He lived and breathed details. He was the king of logistics. The first few times he ran the Boston Marathon, he came armed with precision schedules to rival a Swiss training company. The members of our family who lived within a 200-mile radius of Boston, and there were many, were divided into teams. We were given sheets with mile-by-mile arrival times, not approximate times, the time. And by God, if he didn't arrive exactly when he said he would. Longitude and latitude coordinates, bib numbers, clothing description, and bottles of precisely mixed electrolytes. This was long before the existence of apps that let you track a runner's location, and even before the existence of cell phones that might have let you check with the other support teams to see whether they'd seen John run by yet. You were out there on your own at mile 11, or mile 18.7, or wherever John told you to stand and pick him out from the crowd of thousands. The stakes were high. I didn't want to be the one who threw his time off, knocking over the dominoes the rest of the way down the race course. One year he made a large sign that said Coors, the name of his running group. We held these signs so that members of the group who didn't necessarily know who we were would be able to find us and grab the electrolytes we were clutching for them too. And although we only had 3 support teams, John had us leapfrogging all along the course so that we were present every couple of miles or so. Toward the end of the course, a random runner ran by, saw the sign, and said, "You guys are everywhere." It was a very proud moment for me because it meant John's plan had worked exactly as it was supposed to, and I knew he would be pleased when I told him about it, and he was. Each marathon was stressful. Don't even get me started about the 100-milers he used to run. But it was fun, and when it was all over, we would listen to the blow-by-blow of the entire race. Who in the family had been where they were supposed to be, who hadn't, how messages were passed from one runner to another, exactly which mile he was at when he got that blister on the 3rd toe of his left foot. The race didn't end when John crossed the finish line. There was still the recap, the debrief. One of my favorite John marathon stories from 2014, an uncharacteristically challenging race for John, was when he went to an aid station and asked for something salty. The volunteer looked at him blankly for a second, then said, "We have Vaseline." That was the last time I saw him run. He was supposed to run in Boston this year, and although there were 30,000 people running, including Laverne, the course still felt a bit empty to me. So yes, he had an amazing brain for details, and he never lacked confidence in his ability to remember. Since his death, there have been many times when someone in our family has tried to remember the specifics of a situation, one that often involved him. What year was it when such and such happened? Why would I have been in Seattle in insert year here? What was the name of that funny waiter we had at dinner that time? With equal parts sadness and admiration, our reply is always the same. John would know. For instance, here's a question only John could answer. How long did that personal record of showering every day last back in the mid-70s? Did you know? Let me explain. Every summer, my father and stepmother would take the 4 of us, along with my 3 step-siblings, hiking in the White Mountains for a week. People often mistook us for a camp. John always led, full of encouragement for the rest of us. This is undoubtedly where his love of mountains, which I believe he was born with, took hold and grew. At some point earlier in the year in question, John had decided that he was going to have a streak of taking a shower every day, no matter what. For a teenage boy, this isn't a bad idea, but there are some days when a shower just isn't possible, except for John. There we were at Lakes of the Clouds Hut in the White Mountains, 6,000 feet above sea level. I know it doesn't sound that high to those of you in this part of the country, but back east it's about as high up in the remote as you can get, and it is not a place outfitted with showers. It's cold up there, even in the middle of the summer, but John was John. We, his adoring admirers, stood there shivering and watched as my dad poured a bucket of icy water from the mountain lake over John's head. I get cold now just thinking about it, but John was determined. A street was a street, and a shower was, well, in this case, it was getting wet with water coming down at you from above, I guess. That streak lasted months, if not years. I'm not sure, but John would know. Another year, when we were hiking, John thought it would be a fun challenge to see if he could make it through the day speaking only 10 words. Not a limited 10-word vocabulary, but 10 words total. So, let that sink in for a minute. John Zobel, speaking only 10 words in an entire day. And because it was John, part of the challenge involved not telling anyone that he was doing it. Somehow I knew, though, and in my memory, I'm the only one who knew, but maybe after this one of my siblings will tell me they knew too. But I considered myself special because I was in on the secret. And that was something about John too. You wanted to be noticed by him, and you wanted him to think you were special. And although John was such a reasonable, practical person, he also did have a huge streak of sentimentality in him. As kids, we made home movies based on movies that my mother had made with her brothers. He gave each of us pet names that only he called us. Mine was Lil. As an adult, he reconnected with and cherished dear friends from grade school. He loved ceremony and tradition. A few years ago, I visited at Christmas. I was poking through all the cards on the mantelpiece the way a younger sister should. There was a card from John to Laverne. On the inside, it said, Happy Earth Day. Not Earth Day, Earth Day. I asked John what that meant, and he told me the story. Though he and Laverne had both worked at Davis Wright, they didn't really get to know each other until they were on a hiring committee together. The committee went out to dinner with a candidate, Martha Erdman, and that was when John and Laverne first connected. Maybe John wowed Laverne with the story of his daily shower streak. I do know that Martha Erdman is long gone from Davis Wright, but John and Laverne continued to celebrate the anniversary of that day every year, and even gave it its own special name, Earth Day. John remembered, he remembered, and he relished. Earth Day is a perfect example of how John, so loquacious, didn't always need a lot of words to convey a story or feeling. He could boil a full, rich, complex concept or event into a single word. He did this frequently so that he often spoke in kind of shorthand. Long ago, our dad told us a joke which was essentially, what do a judge and a fish have in common? Anyone? They both have scales. Later, when Dad repeated the joke, John jumped in with the punchline before he even finished. Scales! Then John would throw it in non-punchline situations. No, he would throw it in the punchline when someone told a different joke. He would throw it in non-punchline situations, like in response to a goofy thing that someone said, or to fill an awkward silence. My sister Sarah recently found a birthday card from John. The inscription was simply, Scales! Love, John. And although we can barely remember the original joke now, that single word, Scales, connected all of us back through the years, through the ups and downs of our family. It was our secret code word, even if we didn't really know what the heck it stood for. It didn't matter. It stood for John. As we kids grew older and started having kids of our own, our family began a summer tradition called Cousins Camp, when we all get together at my parents' house in Vermont on the shores of Lake Champlain. We're a large family, if you haven't noticed yet, and not a quiet one. Right, Laverne? While we love each other and love being together, it can be a bit overwhelming at times. About 5 years ago, while going on a grocery run, John and I discovered a sweet little place that sold, as luck would have it, coffee, pastries, and wine. John and I quickly adopted the practice of going each morning to enjoy coffee and scones and each other's company in relative, pun intended, peace and quiet. Ever since then, in the months and weeks leading up to Cousins Camp, John and I would email and text, see you in 2 months, scones, as I count down. These messages soon became simply, scones, always with an exclamation point, to signify our eagerness to see each other and spend crazy family time together. Eventually, scones became shorthand for, I love you, and love being your sibling. Scales, scones, Earth Day. John's conversations were peppered with one-word references like that. References to jokes from 40 years ago, or British comedy sketches, or bakery items, and they were the gravitational pull that kept him connected to the people he cared most about. He's passed this trait on to Eric, I notice. If you've ever spent time with them, the two of them will witness the shorthand they've developed, the one or two word phrases they throw back and forth to crack each other up. If you asked, they would take the time to explain the meaning to you, but sometimes you felt lucky enough just to watch this father-son talent and love play out in front of your eyes. Whether it was a long, detail-rich story or a single word dropped at precisely the right time, John was a master at meaning and connection. Remember that day he tried to speak only 10 words? It was a disaster. Not for him, but for us. There was a lot of misbehaving and chaos among the rest of the kids, and I distinctly remember my dad sitting us all down and telling us that if we didn't get it together, he would pull us off the hiking trail and end the trip. We did, and he didn't. And I think John finally came clean about why he was being so silent. We needed John as our anchor, our leader, our touch point. Sure, we needed him just to help keep us in line, but mostly we got our energy from him, and he guided us, singing, cracking jokes, quoting entire Monty Python sketches, teasing us and encouraging us. We could not function as a family without his voice. We now have to face the painful reality of life without John's physical presence. But fortunately, we will always have John's voice with us. In his writings, in the songs that remind us of him, and there are many, in that dusty birthday party cassette tape, in our memories and retellings of the stories he told, and in those code words, short but powerful, that summed up his energy, his enthusiasm, and his love for us. We love you, John, and we will miss you. Scales.
Lower, Markham. My name is Greg Adams, and I was part of John's circle for 30 years. I should say some of his circles, because John's wide array of talents and interests created many circles for him. I was favored with central participation in some of those circles, such as his running life. I ran at least 12,000 miles with John. And together we ran out of the sixth floor of this club with a wider running group known as the Tours, of which there are more than 25 representatives here attending today. Let me offer a brief explanation of the title of my remarks. Remembrance, irreverence, refulgence. Remembrance is obvious, but the others might not be. When I was asked to participate today, one of the first things I did was ask my tour's running friends to offer their remembrances of John in one-word descriptions. I received more than 100 votes spread across approximately 50 words. Several voters suggested irreverent as a description, which resonated with me both because it's accurate and because I thought it fits as a word for today. In 30 years, I took a lot of directions from John. and as I thought about the tone to take today, I could hear John's voice instructing me to be irreverent. He would want rebuttal time, but he would insist on irreverence. And refulgence? Well, that drew just one mention from the tours, but it was simultaneously the most absurd and fitting offering that I received. After looking it up myself, I can report that it means shining very bright or brilliant, which clearly applies to John and his life. I first met John in the early summer of 1987. I was in the old Davis Wright Checkers cafeteria in Century Square, sitting at a table with my partner Hall Bates, strategizing about our team for an upcoming running race against other Seattle Washingtons. An eavesdropping young lawyer at the next table, who turned out to be John, came up to us, introduced himself, and said he'd like to join our team, that he used to be a runner. John had not been maintaining any workout routine at that time, and he did not appear, shall we say, to be in great shape. But we made arrangements for John to join our team, and he departed. Paul, in particular, was skeptical that John would be a valuable member of our team, offering, and I quote, "I don't know. He doesn't look much like a runner to me. He's kind of a butterball." Paul's skepticism notwithstanding, John did join our team, participate in the race, beating Hall, by the way, in the process, after just a few weeks of training. And then he joined the WAC and became the youngest charter member of our running group, the Tours. Now, I told you that the Tours offered around 50 words to describe John, but no one suggested the word that has always been first on my list: entertaining. I reminded John regularly that I reserved some of my friendships for those who entertained me, and that he was always number one on that list. Now, John frequently entertained purposefully and intentionally, but he also entertained when he was not specifically trying to, and even in spite of himself, when he might have preferred not to. This was a great fit with the Tours, a collection of originally middle-aged and now elderly men who have retained connections for more than 3 decades. We tend, however, to manifest our commitment to each other in the diverse manner of relentless verbal sparring, what I will call attack banter. It was and remains a sign of your acceptance by the group to be the frequent target of our attack banter. One tour who was a victim of a particularly large dose of our acceptance one day described it as like a pack of wolves picking out the weakest member on any given day and attacking him. Well, measured by the frequency of serving as the target, John was one of our most accepted members. And he also provided a whole lot of more than his fair share of acceptance to others in the group as well. Often the game was just to get John started. Most of you know that John was, shall we say, tightly wound. He was actually recognized by a formal vote as the most intense tour, which is a remarkable achievement in a group that contains Stanley Kravitz, Jack Strother, Ross Chapin, and Hall Bates. You know the expression about pushing someone's buttons? Well, when I think of John, I think of the television ad for Staples, where customers can push the easy button to get things done. All of John's buttons were easy buttons. We would compete to see who could push one first, and then enjoy the blowback that would follow. Now, occasionally, one would regret setting John off. Fellow tour Roy Mann found out the hard way. Roy tended more toward a amused listener rather than a participant in our usual attack banter, but one day decided to play and actually reviewed some of John's most reliable flashpoints ahead of a long run. Now, Roy originally spent 9.5 years in a 10-year training program to become a Jesuit priest, which it turns out is not the best possible preparation for participation in the competitive exchange of barbs with more experienced tours. Shortly after the run started, Roy launched his rehearsed button-pushing missiles. Instantaneously, John rejoined with a lengthy and, for me at least, not so much for Roy, for a highly entertaining response that went on for 6 miles or about 40 minutes, during which Roy literally did not utter a single word, and John did not appear to even take a breath. I commiserated with Roy afterwards. At that point, Pete Sampras was the best tennis player in the world, and I suggested that Roy's foray into attack banter was the equivalent of taking one tennis lesson, then deciding you were ready to play Pete Sampras. It was not destined to go well. Beyond the easy buttons, as Liddy has so clearly told you, John was always, shall we say, a generously thorough storyteller. I like to say that John told stories in real time. That is, it took as long to recount the story as it took for the event to occur in the first place. Unless John favored you with commentary, which was frequent, in which case it took longer to retell than the event had in the first place. Now, with the ordinary person, this is not necessarily a desirable characteristic. But with John it worked because the entertainment to minutes ratio was still wildly positive, notwithstanding the length of the story. For me, Exhibit A was John's 20th high school reunion. A couple of us had lived the build-up to that event because John was anticipating it with some notable angst and guilt regarding long-ago transgressions involving a high school girlfriend. We knew he planned to make a dramatic apology at the outset of the reunion itself. When John came back from Boston, he reported on the event during a 17-mile run up to Discovery Park and back, which was almost, but not quite, long enough to relive the... We received an extraordinarily detailed and particularly hilarious description of John's self-described inept apology efforts and the girlfriend's response. We were laughing so hard at 2 separate points of the run that we had to stop to regain equilibrium. The only more amusing storytelling episode that I was a listener regarding came a few years later. Many of you know that John was truly obsessed by the television show The Amazing Race, an obsession that took his already legendary intensity to levels that are indescribable, really, explainable only through statistics. Ultimately, John applied 22 times to be on The Amazing Race, with more than a dozen different partners. He tried with Laverne and with other family members, including a half-brother living in France that John first met when he was nearing 50. During John's long hair ponytail phase, he submitted an application with a buzz-cut military recruiter. And then, this is absolutely true, he applied with a woman he met online in an internet chat room for Amazing Race groupies. He kept this obsession under wraps for me for the first 8 applications, but decided that maybe I presented a new angle for his next run. Thus, on a 20-mile run, he spent nearly 2.5 hours recounting his prior 8 attempts and seeking to persuade me to be his partner for the 9th try. The absolute pinnacle of the very most entertaining run of my entire life was John's 1-hour account of becoming acquainted with his chat room groupie friend and traveling to the Midwest to meet her and to go through the race application process with her. So as usual, I surrendered to John's entreaties and we applied to become contestants. Even more intensely than usual, John directed my efforts. He looked over my shoulder and offered instructions as I filled out the 15-page application because John said, this is the direct quote, "I know what they're looking for." Personally, I would observe that 22 unsuccessful applications suggest otherwise. But he was convinced in his own intense and entertaining way that he did. Anyway, predictably, we were rejected. I think our application, including the video we made, ended up in a big box in the Amazing Race office at CBS labeled John Zobel Discard. He went on to try with others, and then a second time with me as his designated partner for his 20th try. But this time, without telling me that we were blind. Again, I'm not making this up. He filled out my entry form. After all, he knew what they were looking for. Signed it on my behalf and surreptitiously submitted the application. I have no idea what he did for a videotape. Again, we were rejected. This time, before I even knew that we applied. John's Amazing Race obsession extended to urban adventure racing in general. There were several different races that provided local and regional competition and took winners to nationals. These races became John's new fixation, competing often with son Eric and other times with me. John made a science of thinking ahead and outguessing the race organizers about what activities would be part of the competition. We went to 2 national competitions together, and for both of them, he researched all of the regional competitions. In one case, it was, I think, about 32 of them, to discover the common themes that would allow him to make predictions regarding what would be in the nationals competition. And then he would make a list of physical and mental tasks, activities, and challenges that we would practice. At one 2-day nationals competition, we killed the skills challenges because John had guessed correctly every single one of the physical challenges and most of the mental challenges, and we had practiced them repeatedly. We also were in the very top of the general knowledge competition in most categories: history, geography, current events, sports, literature. But there was one glaring omission in our preparation. We crashed and burned on the pop culture. As one example among many, we failed to identify the singer Usher from his picture. Our dismal performance on the pop culture portion of the event dropped us out of contention to win, although we did rally on the run portion of the event the next day to take second. Immediately after the race was over, John began to plan how we could do better the next week. The primary fix was obvious to him. He assigned me to carefully review each issue of People magazine for the next 12 months, focusing on celebrity recognition. This assignment ultimately proved useless. John had a conflict that prevented our return to nationals after we had again won the regionals. I never stopped reminding him that the hours I spent in People magazine were hours that I was never going to get back. But thanks to John, I do have a surprising facility for recognizing pop culture celebrities from 2013. It's been therapeutic for me to prepare this irreverent remembrance of John and his refulgence. It's been nearly 4 months now since we lost him, and we all feel the hole in our lives that his absence has brought. I still think about him every day. You would think that it would be painful to do so. But I find that whenever I think about him, I inevitably think about one of the many episodes of his life that I was privileged to share. One of the times when he was so much fun to be around. So amusing, so incredibly entertaining. And I find myself amused and entertained yet again, and I smile. In fact, this, as with every other crazy thing I recited today, is absolutely true. There have been several times when a recollection has prompted me to laugh out loud in public, for no reason apparent to the startled strangers nearby, causing them to edge away from this perhaps strange man, laughing without discernible cause. Although I can be a slow learner about some things in life, after 60 years of experience, I've learned reasonably well not to offer unsolicited advice to others, because it's usually unappreciated and almost certainly will go unheeded. Thanks to my spouse and daughters for that lesson. As a result, I do not intend to tell you how to think about John and how to process his loss. I can only tell you instead that for me, the memories of my time together with John, reliving them with all of their humor, warmth, and pure and simple entertainment value, allow me to enjoy my recollections of John, cherish the time that we shared, and feel uplifted rather than lost. I hope you find your own positive way to remember John's presence in your life as well.
I need to go even lower. Hi, I'm Mary Steele. I was a partner with John at Davis Wright for many years and also a partner on a number of climbing trips with he and Laverne. We spent a lot of great time together. And if you know John, you know that he was good at just about everything. I found that often people who are like that don't have a lot of patience for us normal people. And sometimes John didn't have patience for us normal people, but often he was completely different and had more patience than anyone I can imagine. I remember him trying to teach my son how to throw and catch a baseball. And that is a patience-trying thing. But John was encouraging, he was kind. And it wasn't just to my son, it was to many people's kids. Many people's kids learn things because John had that kind of patience. There was one climbing trip we did together that where that patience, I think, was tried by me. We were climbing the Olympics. I can't remember where Laverne was. It was just the two of us. And I was not on my game that day. Let's just say my head was not in it, and I was doing some stupid things. And at one point, I missed a step and ended up sliding downhill in a snowfield headfirst on my back, which is not a great way to slide down a snowfield. I managed to stop, and John came down, and he just looked at me, and he said, "Okay, let's not do that again." And I could tell that he was just watching me for the rest of the day, and never said a word about it, but was just watching to make sure I was going to be all right. And that day we were traversing a peak, and coming down, we couldn't find the trail. And so we had to bushwhack, and I mean literally, like sometimes crawl under and through vegetation, and it became what we call in climbing terms an epic. And unlike in poetry, epics in climbing are not good things. And it was getting dark, and we had to climb at one point we had to find a way to get around a cliff. And we finally got down, and we were covered from head to toe in scratches and bruises. And we got to the car, and John just looked at me and in his very wry John way said, "Well, that was fun." And there's nothing that I wish more than that we had a family tradition of going up to Mazama to John and Laverne's cabin and on Memorial Day, and that Memorial Day was the opening of Mike's Hard Lemonade season. And so John would only drink that from Memorial Day to Labor Day. And there's nothing I wish more than that we were sitting at the cabin and telling a story of another epic and drinking Mike's Hard Lemonade. But maybe instead we can go home and we can just be a little more patient with the people around us and remember John. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Joanne Coons, also known as Spike from the Village of Riding Grove, and this is Deborah. We're going to tag team here. First of all, if John had been here to edit this stuff, it would be a lot better. The really cool writing group, the RCWG, was born on a warm summer evening in 1995 at our graduation party for the commercial fiction writing class. John was the driving force to begin a critique group and invited 5 others to join him, including me, one of the luckiest days of my life. Over the following 22 years, RCWG members moved away, dropped out, and dropped back in. But John was the one constant, always finding new members to fill the void. A total of 20 different writers have been RCWG members at various times since it began, most of them recruited by John. Those 20 writers have published articles, essays, stories, and 9 books, with another 6 books in various stages of submission. John's publications include his book, A Slight Change of Plans, and an article he wrote with his father titled, Those Magnificent Men, 100 Years of Naval Aviation. John's critiques, encouragement, and insights are part of that significant body of work from the Really Cool Writing Group. And of course, his friendship enriched each of those 20 writers' lives.
As any writer will tell you, having your work critiqued is like having an operation without anesthesia. To be an effective critique partner, you must be supportive and compassionate. But most important, you have to have the courage to be honest. John was a generous and fine surgeon, his scalpels being his sharp wit and sense of humor. He would all have us laughing at our bloody first, second, and third drafts. He developed many techniques unique to him. He was a self-dubbed effing English major. He could cite an errant comma a mile away. He sometimes entertained to make a point by singing an appropriate line in anything from rock to opera, or reciting Monty Python dialogue. Often he threw himself into contortions to demonstrate how physically impossible our descriptions really were. Often he was pithy. My favorite was when I attempted to write a love scene. His first comment was, yuck. A little further down the page, double yuck. On the third page, see 2 previous yuck. We are all indebted to John for his insights. When I was working on a collection of short stories, John said, "We know you think you're writing short stories here, but there's a novel here and you need to write it." That short story is now 450 pages. John was persistent and ever seeking excellence. I think even he lost count of the number of times he rewrote the opening of one of his novels of the trilogy he was working on. One of the last things he wrote about was a cross-country trip he took with Eric. John had us laughing and tearing up over his desperate attempt to get sand out of a rental car in a city that has no car washes, Manhattan. So he could get rid of the car, he used his hands and a squeegee that's normally used on car windshields. He wanted to spend his last few hours with Eric before leaving him at NYU. We told John the piece was great, but something was missing. We couldn't quite put our finger on it, but we asked him to think about it. At our next meeting, John said, "Hey, you were right. I remembered that when Eric was little, he loved going to the car wash. He'd sit in the back seat, kick his legs, and laugh. He just loved it. That belongs in the piece." We hope you got to make that revision. It seems the length of John's life was really a length of a short story, when I know we all would have wanted him to live a trilogy.
John was a brilliant writer. His legacy of written work is beautiful, witty, and extremely well-researched. His unfinished work includes a trilogy of novels set around World War I, involving espionage, aviation, and blackmail, a biography of early flyer Eugene Ely, and his 2016 blog, Gods and Machines, featuring vignettes of early aviators. To honor John, we are working to ensure the Really Cool Writing Group continues. And so far, we're doing good. In addition, we established a scholarship in his name for the Squaw Valley Community of Writers Workshop, which John attended and found invaluable. Thanks to the generosity of John's family and friends, as well as the writing group members, at least 2 writers will be awarded the John Zobel Memorial Scholarship this summer. We miss you so much, John. The RCWG began as your idea decades ago. We've taken the path you paved for us, benefited from your guidance, and will try to continue to meet the high standards set by you in your writing. Thank you for gracing our lives.
Laverne and Eric, members of John's family, dear friends and colleagues of John. My name is Craig Miller, and for some 20 years I worked shoulder to shoulder with John in many cases. And I here testify that among the many things this world lost when we lost John was a cracking good trial lawyer. Of course, John chose not to pursue that career, but when he was doing it brilliantly. Great energy, dedication to clients' interests, gorgeous, persuasive legal writing, selfless teamwork, boundless good humor, great courtroom skills, guts, the whole package. And one more thing. With the occasional automobile roof rack notwithstanding, John possessed a truly photographic memory. Once John had read an exhibit, the image itself, the mark that could have been an erasure, the odd signature, the missing page number in the sequence, all of it was in his brain and available for instant recall. From the perspective of a trial partner, it was a skill that was as uncanny as it was handy. Actually, spending time with John, I became accustomed to his effortless, prodigious displays of recall. And of course, including his recitations of the celebrated Python. I had heard, and more than once, and you know from home, the entire cheese shop skit before I actually ever saw it. And while we're on the subject, yes, for sure, Python held a special place for John, but it was only one in a suite. Monty Python, The Goon Show, Firesign Theater, Groucho Marx, Tom Stoppard's plays, the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern scenes from Hamlet, anything, everything, in fact, that involved pinnacle literate comedy. John loved it and he shared it. And speaking of fun, in the midst of the difficult occupation of litigation, there is sometimes given, though never more than once to any lawyer in a career, one perfect case where it all goes perfectly right, it's all perfectly zany, and it's all perfectly sick litigation fun. I was so blessed with such a case. Indeed, I was twice blessed because, if you can even imagine such a wonderful thing, on that one perfectly zany case, my trial partner was John Zobel. I speak, of course, of the Australian rock crusher machine case, which John and I together tried for an entire month in a windowless juvenile courtroom in Clark County with a wonderful judge, Judge Richard Eadie, on the bench, and best of all, with fools and scoundrels on the other side of the courtroom. It was not yet 11 a.m. on the first morning of trial, and another goofball thing came out of the mouth of opposing counsel, and John turned to me and said in a voice much louder than a stage whisper, "And now for something completely different, a man with 3 buttocks." Edie rotated toward the wall. I memorably hit my head on the edge of the table and sat down pretending to search for an exhibit. Things erupted over there. But with that Pythonism, John had, of course, produced the tagline for the next 4 weeks of trial. And let me tell you, when over the course of a month, in a windowless room, prisoners of circumstances as you are, 2 people say to each other 10 times a day, And now for something completely different, a man with 3 buttocks. You will have something. Something most amiable. Something now clutched, precious, in a locket. When John comes to my mind, and many moments call him to mind, his image is vivid and lively. A movie, not a portrait. And it is quite impossible that this great guy, this eternally young man so full of life, this force for the good, is no longer here. But that being the sorry case, I can now only say that it was my honor, my privilege, and my great delight to have been a friend and partner of John Zobel, and I miss him very, very dearly.
I'd like to say before I get started on what I plan to say, that Judge Edie and several other members of the Superior Court bench were friends of mine in the days before I became a recovering judge. And Judge Edie particularly, not alone, other judges said the same thing, but Judge Edie really emphasized what a fine performance John had given. And Judge Edie, in my experience, did not throw compliments around like manhole Even as a very young child, John showed a remarkable sense of responsibility. Self-responsibility for others, particularly his younger siblings. Indeed, so much could one depend on John that I nicknamed him Old Reliable. One particularly vivid illustration of this trait came during the blizzard of '78. Now that doesn't mean anything to people from Washington, but to Massachusetts, it was big, big. John and his brother David, 17 and 15, got somehow permission from an overindulgent parent to go down to the beach near where we lived in Cohasset and watch the storm, which they did until a rogue wave came and started to pull David out to sea. He was saved by John's quickness, strength, and his determination not to lose his brother. Old Reliable. In later life, John remained old Reliable to his wife Laverne, to his son Eric, and through his participation as a Seattle Big Brother. John's character calls to mind the epitaph on Arthur Conan Doyle's Jr. Steel true, blade straight. I can't pass over another prime component of John's essence, which we've heard abundantly and accurately, his sense of humor. Some of you may know that when I was on the bench and thereafter, notorious, well perhaps that's putting it a little strong, but known for wearing a bow tie every day. Well, today I'm wearing a 4-in-hand, a gift from John. He gave me a 4-in-hand, but as he pointed out to me, I could still continue my streak of wearing a bow tie because the design on the 4-in-hand is a series of little bow ties. John's prime commitment in life, we all know, was to learn and to err. Two other passions, however, also claimed his allegiance: climbing and writing. Mountains all over the world drew him, and his writing, especially in the last several years, centered on his biography of the early aviator Eugene Ely. In researching the book, John traveled all over the country and all over the internet. It was a massive project imbued with his skill and his spirit. One person he met, Eugene Ely's great-great-niece, Anna Jane Durham, spoke for many people in an email which we received only yesterday. It's too long to read more than a brief excerpt. Although our connection, Ms. Durham wrote, consisted of only 2 visits, dozens of phone calls, many emails, and numerous texts, life is better after knowing John. I am thankful for his brilliance, for his gift of being meticulous, and his tenacity. 2 weeks after his death at the summit of Aconcagua, the United States Naval Institute Press proffered a contract and an accompanying advance. The offer made clear that John's draft would require substantial editing, as throughout the project John himself had written. No matter. A sandlot ball player would be signing a professional contract. John's foot was on the path that would lead to the big leagues. Contract offer coming so close to John's dying at the moment of his climbing achievement seemed to me to merge the two events and brought to mind the John Singer Sargent painting in Harvard's Widener Library, which depicts a mortally wounded World War I soldier held between 2 figures, one ethereal and radiant, the other hooded and somber. Beneath the picture, an inscription: happy those who with a glowing faith embrace in one embrace, clasp death and victory.
Hello, I'm Carrie Stelper. My dear friend John, kind, considerate, loving, supportive, creative, and wickedly funny. Our revels now are ending. These are afters, as I foretold you. We're all spirits and are melted into air, into thin air. And like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself, yea, all which you inherit shall dissolve. And like this insubstantial pageant faded, leave not a lack behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with sleep. Sweet dreams, dear John.
That brings our proceedings to a close. On behalf of Laverne and Eric and John's entire family, we want to thank all of you for joining us today, and for all the presenters and the musicians, thank you very much. We would invite all of you to join us at a reception in the lobby lounge, which is, as I said, at the other end of the lobby. If you would wait until Laverne and Eric and the family exit the room here, that would be great. Michael and you can continue our music here. So thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you across the lobby.
Yeah, I mean, I've crossed paths a different times.